You're here because you want to learn how to pull a delicious shot of espresso. I'm here to teach you. Let's get into it. Hello, fellow fans and coffee lovers everywhere. Welcome to Fellow's Brew How-To series. My name is Haley. I am a Q Arabica grader and fellow tasting panelist. I'm also an ex-barista with 8+ years in the specialty coffee industry, and I am stoked to talk to you about one of my favorite brew methods, espresso. I love pulling shots. Let's get into why it's so cool. You may be asking yourself, why espresso over any other brew method? Well, first of all of coffee is preference-based, so however you like brewing and whatever your favorite method is your favorite method, and that is absolutely fine and correct. That being said, espresso produces a thicker, creamier texture in short volume amount of coffee due to high pressure and, like I said, concentrated ratio of coffee to water. So usually like a 1:2, sometimes even down to a 1:1 coffee to water ratio. So espresso is very concentrated. The high pressure coming out of the espresso machine, pushing water through a bed of grounds and into your cup, produces that thick, sort of layered texture that we all know and love from espresso. That being said, espresso does have 3 distinct layers in an optimal shot. We've got the very bottom, right, that exists kind of at the base of the cup. It's typically going to be like the darkest bit of the espresso. We call that the heart. It's like the first stuff that comes out as a shot drips out of a machine. In the middle, we have a slightly lighter layer called the body. Should be a lot of solids floating around in there and dispersed evenly throughout the body, which gives the espresso a lot of its flavor. And on the top should be a decent layer of what we call crema, so a creamy, very tawny, light brown layer that sits right on the top of the espresso, and that's your complete shot. So overall, espresso can promote intensity of whatever flavor is present in your coffee. So when there's a lot of sweetness in your coffee, if you brew it as a pour over, that can be intensified by espresso's high pressure and concentrated ratio. So you've decided you want to pull some espresso. What supplies might you need? First off, you need a grinder. Your grind setting, arguably, will make a lot of, if not most of, the difference in how your shot turns out. The coarser you grind, generally speaking, the quicker your shot will pull, or the quicker your coffee will come out. Shot will pull, is what we say when we were talking about coffee coming out of the machine. We pull a shot of espresso. Generally speaking, the coarser you grind your coffee, the quicker your shot will pull. The finer you grind your coffee, the slower your shot will pull. You want a good Bur Grinder because even grounds going into your portafilter, uniform grounds, I should say, going into your portafilter is super important. Water, especially at high pressure, like coming out of an espresso machine, will find the path of least resistance, or go the way that it's easiest for it to go through the bed of grounds and come out. So if some of your grounds are ground very coarse versus other parts of your grounds are ground very fine, so an uneven grind, the water will go through the coarser areas quicker, which promotes what we call uneven extraction, right? Extraction refers to the pulling out of the flavor from the coffee by the water. Uneven extraction is more in some places and less in other places of the grounds. So, grinder, very important. Bur Grinder, super important. I have Opus here, trusty, handy dandy. Next item of importance, of course, is an espresso machine. I have my trusty Linea Mini here. I love it with all my heart. This machine is very manual. There are a lot of machines out there on the market, so definitely don't have to get this specific one. There are also non-electric options such as smaller footprint lever pull machines. Shout out to Flare, buddies of ours, and I love my Flare at home. Another item of importance is a timer of some sort. You can use your cell phone, that's totally fine. I have my tally scale right in front of me, which is a timer and will weigh my coffee going in as well, so it serves 2 purposes. Next thing you need, coffee, of course. You also need a tamp. This will allow you to go ahead and press the coffee grounds into the portafilter, which is a necessary step right before you pull your shot. You are also going to need 2 towels, one to wipe up your drip tray on your espresso machine, one dry towel dedicated specifically to your portafilter for drying it out. Optional things are what we call a knock box. So that allows you to knock the puck of coffee out and into the into this box, this receptacle after you're done, and a scale for both weighing in your coffee and for weighing out your pulled shot. Scales and timers, not mandatory, but super, super helpful. Monitoring your time and your weight going in and your weight coming out just allows you to see what variables you might want to change later. They're kind of just observations. For instance, I like setting a target of weight in to weight out. So I'll be doing 20 grams of coffee in to 40 grams out, right? So that's my target. Say it's pulling at 30 seconds, but the coffee is tasting kind of bitter. I might know that I want the shot to go a little bit faster. So I will still go ahead and weigh out again 20 grams and then pull the shot at 40 grams. So I know those two variables are the same, but I might change my grind setting to be a little bit coarser so it pulls out a little bit faster so that I can eliminate that bitterness, which typically bitterness denotes over extraction. On the opposite end, sourness, if you taste a bunch of sourness, like a puckering sourness in your shot, it's probably what we call under extracted, and you might need to fine the grind, right? Tighten the grind a bit to make your shot pull a little bit longer or a little bit slower because your shot might be under extracted. So that's why I would want to weigh my coffee going in, weigh my coffee coming out, and also take a look at the time so that I know I can keep some variables the same while maybe changing how quick or how slow my shot pulls by adjusting the grind setting. All right, now that you've got all of the stuff that you need in front of you, let's pull a shot. First thing I would do, so I would go ahead and remove the portafilter. I also personally like to send a little bit of hot water through the group head to make sure everything is nice and hot. Heat is really important for extraction, especially with something like espresso, which can be quite finicky. You really, really want to keep your portafilter and your group head, right? What we call, this is the portafilter here, and the group head is where you insert the portafilter into the machine. You want to keep all of that really warm. So I'm going to go ahead and put my portafilter onto the scale and tear out the scale. So now I know when I insert coffee into my portafilter, I am only weighing out the coffee, not weighing the portafilter. I just want to get the weight of the coffee. I pre-ground coffee for this occasion, so I will go ahead and grab that out of Opus right now. Also, Opus has a separate insert so that I can take my portafilter, attach it to the top, turn this whole thing around, the catch cup, that's what we call it, around, and then go ahead and remove the catch cup, place it back on the magnetized base, and I should have just the right amount of coffee, or a little bit over. If you're a little bit over or a little bit under, it's not a huge deal. I tend to stay within 0.3 of a gram above or below my target if I'm like really in a rush, but you want to get as close to your target as possible because even small changes in the amount of coffee that you use can make a big difference in how your espresso shot pulls. I'm going to go ahead and distribute while also knocking just a little bit of grounds off to get down from 20.5 to my target 20 grams. Now, to distribute, you can use just your hand, like I will be, or you can use a distributor, like this really heavy tool. You also could use something called a WDT tool. Highly suggest looking it up. It's pretty cool. It looks a little bit like a head scratcher, but it functions by breaking up big clumps in your portafilter and distributing your grounds evenly. Like I said, I'm going to keep it simple today. Just use my hand. When I do this, I want to make sure I'm not pressing down as much as possible, right? So I am not applying any downward pressure. I am just evenly distributing the grounds around the portafilter, making a flat bed of grounds with no ridges or valleys, no holes. Flat, even bed of grounds is the goal. So generally, I will go once around, positioning the portafilter kind of with my palm on the side so that I'm not pushing downward. And then I'll generally also go one more on the top. I'm not finishing just yet. Still some ridges and valleys because I want to check my weight, make sure I haven't knocked too much off. Now I'm at 20.3, so I will generally take one more pass at it. I try to touch the espresso as little as possible so I can make sure that I am not applying any downward pressure, like I said. So here we go. Gonna try to knock just a little bit more out because I'm at 20.3. Now that I have this all ready to go, this bed of grounds prepared, I am going to get ready to tamp. So I take my portafilter off the scale. I am going to place my portafilter evenly with the bottom because I have a bottomless portafilter. There's not a spout here. If you do have a spout, I would place the top corner on a level surface, as level as possible. But since I have a flat bottom, I'm going to place the bottom of my portafilter level and flat on this flat surface that I have here. I'm going to take my tamp, position it directly into the portafilter. It should fit pretty perfectly. I'm going to grab the portafilter with as straight up and down an arm as I can and go ahead and apply even downward pressure. And whatever that means to you, keep that pressure the same as much as possible between shots because that will eliminate another variable in your routine. When you're done tamping, you want to see an even tamp around. It's not really leaning in one direction or the other. I tend to do a little twist to relieve pressure and pull up, put my tamp away, and now you're ready to pull a shot. So you want to gently insert your portafilter into your machine. I like to hold the machine and push tightly, but still gentle. I didn't jam it in there. Make sure to quickly pull your shot so as not to have any water leak from the portafilter into your bed of grounds and pre-infuse prematurely, right? Pre-infuse the grounds with water before you're ready to extract or pull your shot. Now, ready to pull the shot. I'm gonna start the timer at the same exact time. Let's go. All right, and now that your espresso shot is pulled, you might want to give a little stir so that all of the layers mix up when you sip, so you're not sipping into one specific layer, but you're getting the whole experience. And you might want to sip quickly so that the layers don't separate. Now, I want you to know that this is all a starting point for espresso. There are so many combinations of ways to pull espresso, parameters at which to pull espresso. I tend to like 20 grams of coffee in, 40 grams of coffee out at in between 26 and 32 seconds. This shot came out right around 29 seconds at 20 grams in and 40 grams out. Totally happy with it. Again, this is just a starting point to get you on the road to pulling delicious espresso. Two things to watch out for. A sour finish, really overly sour, would denote under extraction, meaning you have to pull more out of the coffee. You didn't pull enough out, meaning you would want to grind finer and your shot would pull slower. Over extraction is the opposite. It's going to be bitter, chalky at the end, and you probably pulled too much out of your coffee, meaning you'll want to pull back the grind setting or make it coarser and pull your shot quicker so that you don't over extract. All right, let's get into some FAQs. 1, how do I choose the right beans? Choosing espresso beans, again, is very subjective. If you like fruity, super fruit bomby coffees, generally, I'd recommend going for it with espresso because espresso will just bring those fruit qualities out even more. Same token, if you like chocolatey, nutty, rich coffees, I would go for that on espresso because espresso will enhance those qualities even more as well. 2, do my beans have to have espresso in the name, or will any blend or single origin do? Any blend or single origin will do. Some coffees are roasted to be geared toward espresso. However, it's not exclusive. If you really like a coffee, chances are you will also really like it as espresso. I recommend trying a bunch of different coffees as espresso. It's super fun to experiment and explore with stuff you already like. If you need help choosing the right beans, highly recommend going to our marketplace at fellowproducts.com. We've got a bunch of coffee and descriptions there organized by flavor experience, and you can go check it out. It's all curated and selected by our tasting panel for you. 3, how do I know what setting to grind beans at? That's also a good question. If you're an Opus user, there's a spectrum, like a cheat sheet on the inside lid that will tell you how fine to grind for espresso, but pretty fine is my answer. And here's a quick little visual aid. You want to grind your beans pretty fine, definitely finer than you would for any pour over, probably towards the finest setting on your home grinder. 4, what is channeling and how can you tell that a shot is channeling? Channeling is the word that we use when we say water is running quickly through one part of the espresso grounds and not through other parts. It's usually denoted by a more blonde-ish color on one part of the portafilter as the coffee is coming out, and on the other side it would be a darker brown. The part where the espresso coming out is more blonde would be where it is channeling, or where the water found the path of least resistance from machine to cup and took that path of least resistance. So that basically promotes uneven extraction. 5, what is settling and should I settle? Never settle. Just kidding. So settling is what we call taking the portafilter and giving a light 2 taps, 1 tap. Got to make it standard every time you pull your shot, or else it will be an uncontrollable variable. When I settle, I just 1 even downward motion usually gets your grounds, if they're like fluffier, to sit into the portafilter. It can affect how your shot pulls because it's already packing the grounds in pretty tightly before you even tamp. So should you settle or should you not settle? I recommend trying it out and seeing if it works for you in your routine. You settle before you distribute. Recommend trying it out, and if you find that your shots are coming out inconsistent or always too slow, maybe omit it from your routine. 6, what do I do if my coffee tastes sour or bitter? As I mentioned before, sour usually denotes under extraction, meaning your shot pulled too quickly. You want to make it pull longer or grind finer. If your shot tastes bitter, you want to do the opposite. Your shot probably pulled too long. You want to pull back on the grind setting and grind it coarser so it pulls quicker. If changing the grind setting doesn't yield the results that you would like, that's when I would recommend changing how much your coffee you are using. So upping the dose a little bit or taking the dose down slightly. I would up the dose if I wanted a little bit more out of the coffee. I would take the dose down if I wanted a little bit less out of the coffee. And I tend to only go down in tenths of a gram. So the most I'll usually take down at a time is 5/10 of a gram. So if I'm at 20 grams, I've adjusted my grind setting, it's still not coming out how I want to, I still want a little bit less out of it, I would go from 20 to 19.5 grams. Finally, last question, what does a bar or bars mean in reference to an espresso machine. A bar is a unit of atmospheric pressure. So when we typically pull at 9 bars, that's 9 bars of atmospheric pressure. So it's just a unit of measure that we use with espresso machines. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope we got most, if not all, of your questions answered and you're ready to start pulling some delicious espresso. If not, drop us a line in the comment section. We always love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out Fellow Drops, a text-based, non-committal subscription service where we text you every Tuesday about a deliciously curated coffee that is usually, if not always, exclusive. And you text us back if you want that coffee. If not, we don't send you coffee and we don't charge you. So again, non-committal, but always a good time. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time for the next brew how-to. Cheers.